Okay, hello. This is Mr. M, and today's topic is simplifying and reducing fractions. So, in our last lesson we talked about equivalent fractions, meaning fractions that are the same as each other or equal to each other. And we talked about pizza slices and how if you have 4 out of 8 pizza slices, you really have half a pizza. So 4/8 is the same thing as 1/2. And we even showed in that video that you can take 4/8 and turn it into other fractions as well, because you could times the top and the bottom both by 4, or you could times the top and the bottom both by 100, but the way that you get 4/8 to be 1/2 isn't by timesing both the top and the bottom by the same number, it's by dividing both the top and the bottom by the same number. In this case, if you divide the top and the bottom both by 4, your 4/8 turns into a 1/2. And 4/8 and 1/2 are both equivalent fractions. Now, when we talk about simplifying or reducing fractions, that's exactly what we just did to 4/8. We took a fraction that was bigger numbers and we turned it into an equivalent fraction with smaller numbers. And we did it by using the same process that we did to make equivalent fractions that were bigger, but this time we're dividing the top and the bottom by a common factor, or dividing them both by the same number instead of multiplying, because we don't want to make fractions that are bigger, we want to make fractions that are smaller and simpler. Here's a closer look. Why did we decide to divide the top and the bottom by 4? For instance, could we have decided to divide the top and the bottom by 5 instead? My rule from the last video was you can do whatever you want to as long as you do the same thing on the top and the bottom. So technically, yes, we could have divided both the bottom and the top by 5, but that wouldn't be such a great idea because 4 doesn't really get divided by 5 so nicely, and 8 doesn't really get divided by 5 so nicely either, so our answer would be pretty weird. So we probably don't want to divide the top and the bottom by 5. But could we have divided the top? Yeah, 4 is divisible by 2, and 8 is also divisible by 2. So we could have divided the top and the bottom both by 2, instead of dividing the top and the bottom both by 4. Let's see what would have happened. If we would have divided the top by 2 and divided the bottom by 2, we would be doing okay because we're doing the same thing to the top and the bottom. Okay, and we would have gotten 4/8 turning into 2/4 because 4 divided by 2 is 2 and 8 divided by 2 is 4. But 2/4 isn't as simple as we can get. So we did reduce or simplify that fraction, but we can still divide the top and the bottom by the same number. And that number in this case is 2. We can simplify this further. We can turn our 2/4 into a 1/2. So 4/8, 2/4, and 1/2 are all equivalent fractions, but the simplest of them is 1/2. So when we talk about reducing or simplifying fractions, we want to get it down to the simplest it can be. Okay, this process is called simplifying a fraction. We also use the word reducing, which means the same thing. The question is, how do you know when you're done? How do you know when to stop dividing the top and the bottom by some number? And the answer to that question is, you know when you're done when you can't do it anymore. So if you can do it, do it. If you can't do it anymore, then you're done. Here's another example. Let's say you have 12/20. First thing we have to do is decide, what am I going to do to the top and the bottom? Well, I could multiply the top and the bottom by anything I want to, but that's not going to reduce them or simplify them. I've got to divide by something. Let's start with the 12 on the top. I can divide 12 by 6. I can divide 12 by 2. I could divide 12 by 3. I can divide 12 by 4. I can't divide 12 by 7 or 5 or 9. Okay, my choices are 6, 2, 3, and 4. So what should I do? Should I divide by 6? Should I divide by 2, 3, or 4? I'm not going to divide by 6. Why not? You can do 12 divided by 6. Oh, but wait, I have to do the same thing that I do on the top, on the bottom, and 20 does not get divided by 6 so nicely. So 6 is not a good choice. The other number here that's not a good choice would be 3. Why? Because even though I can do 12 divided by 3, I can't really do 20 divided by 3 so well. My two choices are 2 and 4, because I can divide 12 and 20 both by 2, or I could divide 12 and 20 both by 4. So which one do I pick? Well, you can do whichever one you want. So let's try it both ways and see what happens. On the top, we're going to try to divide the top and the bottom both by 2. Later on the bottom, we'll try to divide both the bottom and the top by 4. But first on the top, if we divide both by 2, we're going to get 12 divided by 2 is 6, 20 divided by 2 is 10, and we have 6/10. Are we done yet? No, we're not, because you can divide 6 by 2 and you can also divide 10 by 2. And if you can do it, you should do it, because you should keep on going until you can't do it anymore. So, what do you get? 6 divided by 2 is 3, 10 divided by 2 is 5, and we're done now because 3/5 cannot be simplified anymore. Okay, let's see on the bottom what would have happened if we had divided the top and the bottom both by 4 instead of dividing both the top and the bottom by 2. We would have gotten 12 divided by 4 is 3, 20 divided by 4 is 5, and boom, we're done. We've got our 3/5. How do you know when you're done? We're done because 3 can't really be divided by anything, and 5 can't really be divided by anything either. So this is in simplest form. So you're done when you can't divide the top and the bottom by the same number anymore. I hope you appreciate my choice of colors here and how masculine it is. Okay, one more example and I think we'll get the point. Let's say you have 80/90ths. Could I divide both the top and the bottom by 2? Yeah, I could divide 80 by 2 and I could divide 90 by 2. I could divide 80 by 5 and I could divide 90 by 5. But I could also divide them both by 10. Okay? You could have done any of those other steps too. I think this one is easier because the bigger the number that you divide them both by, the faster it's going to reduce. So 80 divided by 10 is 8. 90 divided by 10 is 9. And at this point we are done because this is in simplest form. Why? Because even though you can divide 8 by some stuff, like 2, you can't divide 9 by 2. And even though you can divide 9 by 3, you can't divide 8 by 3. There's nothing that you can divide them both by, therefore it's in simplest form. Alright, at this point I think you're ready to start reducing and simplifying your own fractions. So here's the practice problem of the day. Could you please try to reduce or simplify 30/36? Okay, don't stop until it's in simplest form. Try this one on your own, and we will check our answers together in class tomorrow. Good luck, and I hope you learned something. For those of you who are still watching, I have a bonus word for you. If you write that word that you just saw on the screen in your video notes, I will give you a little bit of extra credit just for fun, just because you decided to watch it all the way to the end. Thanks a lot. See you later.